Hi everyone, welcome to Chapter 7 for Microsoft Excel, using financial and lookup functions, defining names, validating data, and auditing worksheets. In this chapter, we use financial and lookup functions. These are useful tools when we're building valuable worksheets for analyzing data and making financial decisions. We're also going to take a look at the auditing features. And the auditing features help us in understanding the construction of formulas, as well as locating and correcting any errors, and also the ability to test formulas for accuracy. So in Chapter 7, as I mentioned, we are covering financial and lookup functions. And so in the activity that I'm going to go through with you today is the practice activity, Excel 7G loan staff revenue. So I'm going to go ahead and log into our Pearson site. Go ahead and open My Lab in Mastering. Once this page loads, scroll on down to Chapter 7. And we will open up the folder for Chapter 7. And then I want you to locate the activity Excel 7G Loan Staff Revenue Practice. First thing we want to do is download our materials that we need. So I'm going to go ahead and download all those files. Make sure you extract the materials, that you are working with the uncompressed files. And then go ahead and open the student file or your start file for this particular activity. First thing I'd like to do is, after we open the file, go ahead and save this. I like to give it a new name, and I like to put in all capital letters my last name. It just makes it easier for me to find when I'm ready to turn this into the grader. So I'm going to go ahead and save that, and then we can get started. So if you want to follow along with me, go ahead and print out the instructions from the instruction file. I have it next to me. Step 1, we were simply opening up the file. Step 2, we're going to get started with first creating a payment function. So they ask us to navigate to the second worksheet, which happens to be the warehouse payment table. And I'm going to go ahead and navigate to cell B8, where I'm going to enter in a payment function. Now, the payment function is a financial formula. So I'm going to activate my formula tab, look at my formula ribbon, and under the financial category, I'm going to scroll down and locate PMT, because that is my payment function. Now, whenever we work with payment functions show how to calculate a payment manually. And you want to make sure that you understand what the payment function calculates. The first thing it does is that it's going to be calculating a payment based on the number of months and that the loan is for, and the interest for each month, and the interest that is going to be quoted to you by the financial institution, and it's generally going to be in a yearly percentage. Then you're going to determine a set payment based on a fixed interest rate, all right, not a variable. So it's going to be on a fixed interest rate. And so we have to fill in the arguments. So when we look at the data of where we're going to enter into our function arguments here, so our rate we see is going to be 5.25%. And because we are calculating this monthly, we need to divide by 12. And we can see our number of payments are in months, so we simply are going to reference this with a cell reference of B3. And then our present value is the amount of the loan. So again, click in that box for that field, and we enter in the cell reference for the amount of the loan. And then we're going to go ahead and say OK. However, don't hit OK just yet. I'm going to pull back into my formula bar up top here, and I'm just going to put a negative value in there. And we want to make our present value a negative amount so that the solution appears to be in a positive form. After all, when we take out a loan, we're going into debt, and so the principal is a negative amount from the borrower's point of view. All right, so we'll make that a negative amount, and then we say OK, and then we see that our amount here is $10,460.94. Okay, step number 3. And then step number 3, we're going to create a 2-variable data table. And the first thing we want to do is select the range. So I'm going to go ahead and select the range that includes the payment amount. And we are going to go up to the data tab. And in my forecast group, we're going to go to what if, and we're going to choose data table. And we need to determine or specify what our row input cell is and our column input cell. Now our row input cell is our time in months, and so that is going to be our cell reference of B3. And our column input is going to be the interest rate, right? And so that'll be a cell reference of B4. And I will go ahead and say OK, and the table fills. We're not quite done with this table, because if we look at the data in here, it is represented in a decimal form, and we would like this to be more in a currency form. So I'm going to go ahead and select the range C9 through H16, and I'm going to apply a currency cell style. Remember, our cell styles are located on the Home tab in the Styles group, in this Cells group, and we're going to go on down to the Number and Format and select Currency, and it formats it with a $sign, a comma separator, as well as 2 decimal places. Before we move on, we want to select the payment option that is closest to but does not go over $10,000 per month on a 120-month loan. And if I look closely at my data in here, we find that in cell D16, this particular cell does not go over the 10,000. It's closest to 10,000. So we're going to make a note of that, and we're going to use our note cell style. So I'll go up to my cell styles, and in my data and model category, I'm just going to choose the note style there. And so I've now completed step number 3. Let's go ahead and save our changes. Step 4. Now step 4, they are asking us to move to the 4th worksheet, which happens to be job information. And we want to create a name range, but before we can do that, we need to sort our data. So we're going to go ahead and select the range A4 through C11. And then we're going to go up to our Data tab, and in our Sort and Filter group, activate Sort, and we're going to say Sort By, and we want it to sort alphabetically from in ascending order, A to Z, by the job code. So we make sure the order is A to Z. The data column that it's going to be sorted on is the job code, and then we say OK, and we see now that our data is now in alphabetical order according to the job code. We want to create a name range, and we can do this a number of ways. The text in this particular assignment wants us to use the create from selection command. So when we do that, we are selecting a range, and we are then going to go to, I believe it's on our Formula tab. Yes, it is. We're going to go to the Formula tab. In the Define Names group, there's an option that says Create from Selection. And when we use this Create from Selection, what it's going to do is pull data, a name from what we have selected. And in this case, because we're selecting a vertical column, it's making the assumption that we want whatever is in the top cell to be that value that we want to call that, and in this case, job code. So it's going to create a name from the values, and that's check mark. There's a little check mark in there for top row. We're going to go ahead and say OK. So now when I come over to my name box and I hit the down arrow, I see that I have a name called job code. So again, if I were to deselect and be in an empty cell, come back over to my name box and then select that range, it automatically selects that range for me because we created a name from a selection of data. All right, so that was step number 4. Now step number 5, they would like us to display our staffing plan worksheet. So I'm going to click on my staffing plan worksheet, and I want to select the range A9 through A18. So it's A9 through A18. And I want to create a data validation list with my source that's going to be equal to the name range of the job code. So I want to go up to my data tab because that's where I'm going to find my data validation tool. It's going to be in my data tools group, and right to the top here is my data validation, and we want to create a data validation. And what we're doing is here we're going to create our criteria. We're going to allow our value from a list, and the source is going to be equal to that name, that defined name that we just created called job underscore code, JOB underscore CODE, and I will then say OK. All right, so now when I click in the cell, notice off to the right, I have a drop-down menu that I can select one of these job codes that was from my job information worksheet. Okay, so I just wanted to explain that, where we got that. Step number 6. In step number 6, now what we're going to do is we're going to enter in some data. We're also going to enter in a couple of VLOOKUPs. So with my cell A9 as my active cell, I'm going to, in that lookup list arrow, I want to find M-MG, and we are now going to create a VLOOKUP that's going to look up the job code in a array of data, and then based off of what it finds, it's going to fill in the description whenever we enter in a job code. So in my description, I want to go back up to my formula, and a VLOOKUP is a lookup and reference function. So I'm going to, from this lookup and reference option, I want to find my VLOOKUP. So the lookup value that is going to be displayed in cell B9 is, we are looking up M-MG, which is the cell reference of A9, and the table array is found on my job information worksheet, and it is in the range of data from A4 through C11. And the column that we're going to be indexing is column 2, the second column. So it's going to find the job code, and whatever description is adjacent to that is what is going to be displayed. So we're looking at column number 2. And then I will say OK. All right, so when we selected M-MG, and if I look at my job information, M-MG manager is the adjacent description for that particular job code. We want to make sure in my table array, I'm going to pull this back up here. because we need to make sure that that table array, because we're going to copy this formula, and if that's not an absolute reference, it's going to mess everything up. So I'm going to go ahead and open up my functions library to my function argument, and I'm going to click back over to my table array, and I'm going to make that an absolute reference because I'm going to copy this. All right, so we want to make sure that that is an absolute reference. And I'll go ahead and say OK. That doesn't change the result, but it will make a difference when I want to try and copy that formula. Okay, so we're going to add in another VLOOKUP. I'm now on step number 7. So with B9 as my active cell, I want to copy this VLOOKUP formula down through B18. Now we'll notice that we are getting an error message, and that is because we haven't chosen a job code. Once I specify the job code, the description will fall into place. So we're going to move over and continue in filling out the data for row 9. So the number of positions for the manager is going to be a number 1. I'm going to tab over, so I am now in cell D9, and I'm going to manually type in the description for this, which is management. And I'm going to add in another VLOOKUP for my salary. All right, so that's going to be instruction 8. So just for instruction 7, we manually entered in the value of 1 for the number of positions, and we typed in the type of position of what it is. In this case, it's a management. All right, so now let's begin step 8. So I'm currently in cell E9. Again, I'm going to insert another VLOOKUP. So I'll go to my lookup and reference category in my functions library and locate VLOOKUP. And again, the lookup value that I'm going to be looking up is the value that is in A9. And the table array is the same table. So I'm going to go back to my job information, and again I'm going to select that table of information, and I want to make sure again that I make that an absolute reference. This time when I'm referencing it, I want to reference the salary, and that happens to be in column 3. Column A is 1, column B is 2, column C is 3. So we want to reference what is in column 3 because that's what we're filling in there for column E in this worksheet. And I'll go ahead and say OK. So what we have now is, if I were to go back and look at my job information for my manager, so here is my M-MG is a manager, and the manager makes, their salary is $75,000. So we've retrieved that information from the VLOOKUP here. In column F, there is a formula that is multiplying the salary by the number of positions. Now, we didn't enter in this formula. That formula was already in there for us. Okay, so that was instruction number 8. Instruction number 9, we're going to enter in 3 different positions, and we're going to see how this all plays out. So in cell A10, I'm going to select from my list here C-cash, and again you can see how cashier, the description appears. I manually need to specify the number of positions, and so we are told that there's going to be 3 positions, and I'm going to tab over. And I notice I forgot to do something in the previous message, in the previous step, right? So, but I'm going to go ahead and fill this in. This is going to be cashier. And then I'm going to tab over. I'm going to actually come up to my salary, and I want to fill this down. All right, so now I see the salary. See how that filled right in, and then it automatically multiplied the salary for the cashier by 3 to give us the $119,250. All right, so that was our first data that we were going to enter in. The next one is going to be C-CSA, and again, so you can see how the VLOOKUP works here. So that it's looking up the customer service, and then it's also looking up the salary for a customer service representative. We need one of these, one position needs to be filled, right? And it automatically calculates the budget amount, and the category or the type is going to be customer service. We're going to come back down to cell A12, and the job code is M-AMG. Again, it's going to fill in the description because we did a VLOOKUP. We specify the number of positions. In this case, it's going to be 3. And then we also specify the type, which is going to be management. And then you'll notice as I type in the M, it remembers the that I've used that before, so I can just hit enter to autocomplete. And then finally, it will automatically, with that VLOOKUP, it enters in the salary. Because there's a formula in there for the budget amount, it automatically multiplies the salary by the number of positions, and in this case gives us a value of $157,500. Okay, so that is step number 9. Let's move on to step number 10. Now in step number 10, they would like us to delete all these unused rows. So the easiest way I think to do this is go into the row header area and select, click and drag, and select rows 3 through 18. Do a right click, and then simply delete. And then that moves all the data up. We want to sum our budget amount, so we're going to enter in a sum formula here, so you can do that in a number of ways. Since we're on the formula tab, you can use the auto sum. From the home tab, you could use the auto sum. You could select the range of cells and then choose auto sum, and automatically it will do that. We'll undo. I can click in the empty cell and auto sum, and then it will draw the moving border around, and I can confirm that with enter. So there's a number of ways we can do that. We can manually type in equals SUM, and it brings up the formula, right? So again, if you want to see what that looks like, I can say equals SUM and then double click on the formula, but then I need to draw the range and then enter. All right, so there's a number of ways that we can enter in our sum function. Before we complete this, we want to apply a total cell style. So on my home tab, in my title and headings group, I'm going to go ahead and apply my total cell style, which draws a single line above and 2 lines below. I'll go ahead and save my workbook, and we're going to move on to step number 11. For step number 11, we are going to display the bracelet revenue worksheet. And we're going to look at and do some error checking here. I'm going to go ahead and start with cell I5, and notice off to the left I have this exclamation point, this alarm type of symbol that pops up because it's trying to get my attention to tell me that, and if I look at the screen tip, it tells me that the formula in this cell differs from the formulas in this area of the spreadsheet. With that selected though, I'm going to go to my formula tab, and I want to trace the precedence. I want to see where this number is arrived from. All right, so it's taking the second quarter data, and if I look at here, it's taking C5, so my beaded bracelets, and it's multiplying it by 1 for my projected online by the crystal bracelets. All right, so but we're talking about the beaded bracelets, so we do need to go in and adjust this so it's multiplying it by the correct amount. So on the ribbon in the formula auditing group, we're going to choose error checking, and we're going to go down to the bottom where it says edit in the formula bar, and we're manually going to change that 14 to a 15 because B15 is the value that we want in the formula. We want to figure out our projected online bracelet sales for the second quarter for beaded bracelets. And again, if we look at how this formula is being arrived, it is by looking at taking the second quarter and multiplying it by the growth for crystal bracelets and not beaded bracelets. So we're simply going to go in there and change that 14 to a 15. And so we've adjusted and corrected this formula. So I'm going to go ahead and say resume. All right, so that is step number 11. So this moves us on to the next error that it finds, which happens to be in cell M6. And the M6, we notice that the formula is trying to divide by cell L8. All right, so again, we're going to edit in the formula bar. And we can also, well, it's too late now, but I could have traced the precedence, but I can tell in here L6. Let's see, I got L6, it's multiplying L6, or dividing rather, L6 divided by L10. All right, so let me drag this over. So what would have been more helpful if I did that, but I didn't. So I have L6 divided by L10, and L10 is an empty cell, right? That's an empty cell. So again, I'm going to edit in my formula bar, and I want to change that 10 to a 9. So now my formula now shows a value instead of an error message. Now we're going to go and fix that a bit later. All right, let's go ahead and choose resume, and that is step number 12. All right, so notice that it moves on to the next error, and this is our step 13, and we should now be in cell F7. Again, we want to examine the error information. We want to go ahead and look at the formula. We can trace the precedence, and we can see that it's adding these 3 values, but it's excluding the 4th quarter. All right, so we want to say, in this case, let's choose, we're going to do the resume, and for our sum, it should be summing B7 through E7. And we are simply going to say copy the formula from the left. This one is copying the formula from the left. Oh, here we go. No. I'm way ahead. Let's back up here. No, we are definitely going to copy the formula from above. I was just reading the wrong line there, because it certainly didn't make sense to me. So I'm going to copy it from the formula from above. And again, now it moves on to our next error that is found, which is in J8. Again, I can put my trace precedence on, and I can see, okay, it's taking my 3rd quarter, and for my men's bracelets by the crystal bracelets. All right, so in this case, we're going to say resume, and then now we want to say, well, let's go ahead and copy the formula from the left, because we know that's a correct formula. Now that we're all done, it tells us that our error checking is complete, and we can say OK, and both boxes will close. Before we're done here with step number 13, we want to go back up to cell M6, because we want to make sure that this looks like a percentage. So they ask us to use the format painter. So from copying the format from cell M5, and then we'll paste it into M6. So remember, our format painter is located on the Home tab with the cell that I want to copy and copy the format from. Remember, we're not copying the contents, we're copying just the format. We're copying the percentage. It's currently a decimal place. We want to make it a percent. So I'm going to select Format Painter, and I'm simply just going to click in the cell where I would like to paint that. And in that case, it is going to be M6. So we are done completing step 13. I will go ahead and save my changes. Step 14, we're going to move now to the Designer's worksheet. And in cell B2, we're going to be working with the match and the index and match functions. Now, index and match, the match function is commonly combined with the index function. So first we're going to work with the match function by itself, and then we're going to combine it with the index function. And when we combine the two functions, it enables you to find the row number or a column number and then use the index to display the values that you're looking for. So there's two ways that we can use the index, and this is if we want to return the value of a specified cell or range of cells, or if we want to return a reference to a specific cell. So the match cell or the match function itself searches for a specified item in a range of cells, and then it's going to return the relative position of that item in the range. All right, so let's get started here. We're going to go up to cell B2, and remember I am on step number 14. I'm on my designer's worksheet and I'm in cell B2, and we're going to insert a match function. All right, so this is going to be on my formula tab, and it's also going to be a lookup and reference, and I'll select match. I find it more beneficial to use the function's arguments dialog box when you're first beginning working with the formulas that are integrated into Excel, because it lets you know exactly what you need to specify for each criteria, because there's a certain syntax that the formula needs to be written in. By placing them in these boxes, it automatically will put it in the correct syntax. And so you can see up in our formula bar equals match and open and close bracket. And as we begin to fill in the parameters, we're going to see that fill in between the two brackets. So the lookup value that we're looking up here for this match is we want to match the specialty, which in this case is going to be sports bracelets. And the array that we want to look for this is going to be under the specialty category, which is going to be located in cells C6 through C27. Whoops, I forgot to click in the other cell. So let me back up here. Let me remove that here. Again, I'm going to go back up to my lookup value is going to be B1. I forgot to click in my lookup array because the lookup array is going to be the specialty. And the match type is going to be 0. So it's telling me, and if I look inside here, I can see it's telling me it's going to be in the 8th spot. And if I count down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 sports bracelets, that's where I'm going to find that. All right, so it's going to be in that column position of 8. And I'm going to go ahead and say OK. We're going to take it a step further, and we're going to find the designer name for the sports bracelet that is in column position 8, which is in that eighth row. This is going to be an index, and we're going to have a nested match inside of our index function. Again, this is going to be a lookup, so I'm going to go to index. I'll say OK. And the array that I want to look up is going to be, I want to look up the index is going to be looking up the person's name. All right, so we're going to be looking up A6 within A6 through A27, and then we want this to match. All right, so now we type in match, and we need to put this in brackets. So we want to match our sports bracelets, and I'll put a comma. And the array is going to be, which is the same formula that we placed in the cell above, all right, but we're putting it in, nesting it inside of our index formula. And then we're going to reference that with 0, and then we want to put a close bracket on that. And then we say OK. All right, so again, if I come down to sports bracelet, the designer name is Ana Hernandez. And that's what we specify here. So if I were to change this sports bracelet to something else, it would display that information to us down below. All right, so that was step number 14. Step number 15. All right, so now it says in our sheet tab row, they want us to select all of our sheets. So I'm going to come down below, I'm going to do a right click, and then I'm going to say select all. And we want to go to our page setup dialog box. So I like to go to my page layout, and in my page setup group, select the page setup dialog box because that gives me all of my page setup options. And so from my margins tab, we're going to center all of our sheets because remember we have them all selected. We're going to center them horizontally on the sheet themselves. From our header and footer tab, we're going to enter in a custom footer, and in the left section we're going to put in our file name, and in the right we're going to put in our sheet name, and we'll say OK. And we'll say OK again because we're done working with all of our sheets. Now we want to ungroup because notice that these are grouped. All right, I want to ungroup them. So I can either do a right click and choose ungroup, or I can simply just click on a sheet and that will ungroup them. Now notice again that the group note at the top is gone within the information at the top. Let's go ahead and display the warehouse payment table worksheet. And we want to set the orientation to landscape for this one. So let's, page layout tab is already active, so I'm going to go to my orientation. I'm going to change that to landscape. I want to go to my bracelet revenue worksheet. And for this sheet, also I want to set my orientation to landscape. And in the scale to fit group, they want the scale to be at 95%. My scale is currently at 100, so I'm just going to reduce that to 95%. And then I'm going to go to my designers worksheet, and I want to set this worksheet also to landscape. All right, so let's just take a quick print preview of what we have here. So that is the entire workbook. Let's make sure we're looking at the entire workbook. That's page 1. We didn't do anything with the first worksheet. Okay, this is where we calculated our payment and we created our 2 variable data table. All right, on this particular worksheet, we put in our VLOOKUPs. Okay, and this is the array of data that we used for the previous worksheet. On this worksheet, we did our error checking. And on the final worksheet, we put in our match and index functions. Okay, so they look right, nothing's straggling off, so it looks like everything is pretty good here. All right, so that was step number 15. All right, so on step number 16, we're going to go to our Backstage view. So we click on the File tab, and we want to show all of our properties. On that list of properties, let's go to our tags, and we're going to add in staffing plan with a comma, and then bracelet revenue. In our subject box, let's go ahead and type in our course name, CISC 127. Under people, make sure you see your name. If you don't see your name, you can add your name. I'll go ahead and add my name as an author. And then they have you go through, and we already did this, they have you already go through and do a print preview. That was step number 16. Step number 17, you want to ensure that the worksheets are correctly named, placed in the following order. So we first have, let me pop on back out of here, we have warehouse purchase, warehouse payment table, staffing plan, job information, bracelet revenue, designers. All right, so everything is in the correct order. Go ahead, do one final save, and we can now stop and close the workbook, exit Excel, and you can submit your workbook to the grader in MyLab.